ever had a friend who keeps on giving the same advice over and over again? Like, we get it, Karen. Don't text back too fast. But here's the catch. The only reason that advice keeps on coming up is because we keep on needing it. Now, imagine that friend is Jose Rizal, popping up in our collective consciousness every year on June 19 and December 30. He keeps giving us the same advice, century after century. Could it be we haven't really listened yet? Rizal should be obsolete by now. He laid out these deep critiques of Philippine society back in the 19th century, hoping that we'd evolve to the point where we no longer needed those critics. But here we are, and his words still sting like they're fresh. That's not a sign of progress. It's a sign that, in many ways, we're stuck. Take Rizal's stance on language. He believed that a people's language was like a fingerprint of their independence. Yet, here we are, over 100 years after, relying on English as our main language. Now, don't get me wrong, English has its advantages. But when the majority of us struggle to express our thoughts in our native tongue, we're like a bird too afraid to fly. We're without defenses against the influence of foreign cultures, as Constantino pointed out. Our films, books, and even humor have been Americanized to the point that we sometimes feel like strangers in our own culture. Rizal saw language as more than words. He warned against adopting a foreign language as our own, saying it would lead to intellectual captivity. And let's face it, our current educational system don't exactly prove him wrong. Ask any Filipino student, and they'll tell you that one of their biggest obstacles is to learn English. We're out here in 2024 still grappling with colonial era issues. Can we really say we're free if we're struggling in someone else's language? Then there's Basilio, a symbol of what happens when people prioritize personal success over the common good. Basilio was a bright young man, but his ambitions were so narrow. Not my problem, he would say about anything beyond his personal sphere. And don't we still see this today? From professionals turning a blind eye to social issues, to hoarders and corrupt officials, it's like we've got Basilios at every turn, working hard but only for themselves. Rizal's dream was for citizens with a social conscience, not ones who avoid any rock big enough to cause a ripple. Now imagine if we lived in a country where Rizal could be considered irrelevant, obsolete even. Not because we've forgotten him, but because we've actually taken his critics to heart and evolved beyond them. We'd be a society that speaks and thinks in our own language with pride, with professionals who value social responsibility as much as personal success, and a culture that respects its own uniqueness. And maybe, just maybe, Rizal would finally rest, knowing his work is complete. So here's my challenge. Let's aim to make Rizal obsolete. Let's create a future where his critics are outdated because we've actually solved the problems he saw. Until then, let's keep listening to Rizal, not as a voice from the past, but as a guide for the future. Because honestly, I'd love to meet the generation who can finally say, "Thanks, Rizal, we got it from here."